All right, I'm going to do a quick book review of what, Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching. If yeah, I know the most popular one was the translation by Stephen Mitchell, but the only reason why I got the one translated by Jonathan Starr is one, I read several reviews that the translation by Stephen Mitchell is not really that great, and I heard Jonathan does a better translation, and also just the name Jonathan Starr. Come on now, that's close enough. So the reason I'm reviewing this book in particular is because PewDiePie is doing this book review thing going on, or every month there is a book for us to read, and yeah, and the book for January is this one right here. I haven't read a book in a very long time. Usually I just read mangas and stuff, and PewDiePie recommended this book for beginners or people who are a little rusty at reading, and I gotta say, yeah, it is a very good recommendation, because instead of like a traditional chapter book, it's only verses, very short verses to read. And I know I got Fortnite or something going on in the background, but I only have that because I know I'm not that engaging. So I don't know. So as a rusty reader and first time reading this book, what do I think of it? Overall, yeah, the book is pretty easy to read and also very brief and very short. So it only took me 2 weeks to finish the book, and that's only because I spaced it out like 10 verses like a day. And I'm not very good at interpreting things that well. I tend to overlook things or don't see the deeper meaning of stuff. This book made me question a lot of things about the verses. Some verses I'm still confused about, and other verses it just hit home. As you can see, I took notes on the things that intrigued me the most, especially certain verses that made me feel a certain way. And in the beginning, there was a lot of notes that I put on, but for some reason, the second half, I didn't put a lot of notes. And I think it's because it was really repetitive on the second half. There was a lot of verses where it said a lot of the same thing, or it was saying very similar things back to back. And at that point, you kind of get the point. I'm not saying that I'm a Tao master, but it gets to a point. And so from what I'm getting at is Tao is a way of living. It's not really rule sets or strict rule sets. It's just like, oh, let life happen. Let things be as they should. I think that's what I'm getting from it. Many of these verses, there's a lot of, oh, if there's one thing, there has to be another thing. Like one thing can't exist without the other one. And there was a lot of verses where you have to find the alternative. I'd say, for example, on top of my head, it's like, oh, like you could light up a place. That's not a good example. Like, let's say you could be heard without using your voice, or you could fight without using your hands, basically like that. There was always another alternative than the straight answer. And I think that's why I didn't use a lot of notes on the second half of the book, is because it was basically a lot of that. Oh yeah, let me go back to what I said earlier about you can't have one thing without the other existing. Yeah, this is a great example from verse 2. It basically says, like, for something to have a high standard of beauty, ugliness has to exist. If everything is beautiful, then nothing is. And it reminds me of the Incredibles I think it was Syndrome's line. Basically, he says, if everyone is super, no one is. And the other thing I was mentioning, here's this verse: he gives but not to receive, he works but not for reward. And for me, I don't know what he means by that. Yeah, I don't know what he means by that. Because for me, if I'm working, I'm expecting a reward. If I gotta work, I gotta get paid. That's it. That's simple. And here's a simple one: he completes but not for results. And I wrote that he enjoys the journey more than the destination. I know it sounds super cheesy, but it exists for a reason. Like all the cheesy and simple quotes that you hear and like, oh yeah, you know, you kind of hear it all the time. There's a reason for it. On verse 3, there's this part that says filling bellies and strengthening bones. And I'm assuming that it's for like oneself. It's for you, you know, to fill your own belly and strengthen like your bones. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, by stilling minds and opening hearts, by filling bellies and strengthening bones. He shows people how to be simple and live without desires. I believe that's just a way of living, like the way he's saying it. But for me, I see it as you could share these things with other people to strengthen bonds. By strengthening the bond and gaining a friendship, it's nice to eat food, fill bellies, and strengthening bones. It's like, oh, you know, doing activities together, you know, working out or bouldering or just going outside for a walk. You know, it's a bond. It's something to share. That's what I think about it. I don't know if that made sense, but it kind of made sense to me. And I think that's why this book is really interesting, because I feel like you could interpret certain verses your own way and make it your own. I don't know where I was going, but basically for your own interpretation. And I don't know if that's how you're supposed to read this or how you're supposed to understand this, but for me, it made sense. And for verse 5, there's this part. The universe is like a bellows. It stays empty yet is never exhausted. It gives out yet always brings forth more. Man is not like this. When he blows out air like a bellows, he becomes exhausted. Man was not made to blow out air. He was made to sit quietly and find the truth within. And for my notes, I basically said, yeah, man can't be a tool, but can use it, basically. And so Lao Tzu basically describes the universe like a tool. It says here the universe is like a bellows. So he's saying that the universe is a tool. And I just thought maybe the universe is a tool that a man can use. And it was just a simple thought. And I really like this verse. This is verse 11. Wu is nothingness, emptiness, non-existent. 30 spokes of a wheel all join at a common hub, yet only the hole at the center allows the wheel to spin. Clay is molded to form a cup, yet only the space within allows the cup to hold water. Walls are joined to make a room, yet only by cutting out a door and a window can one enter the room and live there. Thus, when a thing has existence alone, it is mere dead weight. Only when it has Wu does it have life. I don't have much to say. I just thought it was a really cool verse. Basically just saying you could make use out of nothingness. And I think that's what basically the whole point of the book is, no? I want to take a look at verse 29 here. There is a part that says, allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it too is a vessel of perfection, just as you breathe in and breathe out. Sometimes you're ahead and other times behind. Sometimes you're strong and other times weak. Sometimes you're with people and other times alone. And what I got from that is my notes here. Highs and lows will always happen. Like breathing in and out, most of the time you breathe at a steady pace until you have to breathe in deep, maybe slow breaths, fast panting, or even holding in your breath. Same goes for highs and lows. Life goes on. From what I'm understanding is they're comparing breathing to the flow of life. There's going to be fast-paced moments in your life. There's going to be just slow, deep breaths, slow moments in your life, and then a steady pace, just steady breathing. Most of the time, your life just goes on day by day and nothing really important or significant happens. At the end of the day, you're still breathing, and that's what I like about that is as life goes on, you're still breathing or something like that. I don't know. I'm not trying to be super deep here. It sounds a little cringy coming from my end, but that's how I understood it. So, and I want to take a look at verse 36 as well. The very last part, it says, "A country that reveals its strength is soon conquered by an enemy." And what I wrote was, revealing your strengths will eventually have a counter. And it could be physically, but it could also be just talking to someone, bragging, or being very cocky, or just being a very stuck-up person. Eventually people will see through your cracks and see how insecure that is. I had this moment where I would basically sound like a know-it-all, and when I see other people do it, I didn't really like it, but I never noticed that I was doing it myself. And so I was talking to this guy. I was basically explaining how to use a certain tool, and he was just listening. He didn't say, "Oh yeah, I know how to do that," or "I know how to use that." It was basically just him listening, and even though he already knew how to use it, he let me talk and just let me just explain how it is. So not only can it be a weakness to basically brag or sound like a know-it-all, but it could also be that person's strength. I guess I'm saying you learn things by staying silent, basically, is what I'm saying. And that's basically it. I don't have anything else to say about it other than, yeah, this is a great start. If you're a little rusty to reading. I definitely recommend it to people who want to get into back into reading again. So, yeah. Anyways, yeah.